Welcome back to Elegant Insights. Research is seeing what everybody else has seen and thinking what nobody else has thought, says Albert Cezanne Georgi. It needs dedication and hard work for a researcher to write scholarly research. In this video, we are going to see about the mechanics of writing scholarly research with regard to spelling, punctuation, italics, names of persons, numbers, titles of works in the research paper, quotations, capitalization, and personal names in languages other than English. Spelling, including hyphenation, should be consistent throughout the research except in quotations where the original spelling must be retained. The researcher should also ensure the consistency by using a single dictionary. He or she can adopt the spelling that it gives first in any entry with variant spellings. Turn off the automatic hyphenation option in your word processor. If you choose to divide a word, you can consult the dictionary about where the break should occur. Plurals of English words are generally formed by the addition of the suffix "es" or "es", with certain exceptions. If there are more than one plural form for a word, the first word from the list should be used by the researcher. Reproduce all accents and other marks exactly as they appear in the original. Now let's come to punctuation. The primary purpose of punctuation is to ensure the clarity and readability. It clarifies the sentence structure, separating some words and grouping other words. A comma is used before a coordinating conjunction, joining independent clauses in a sentence. It's also used between coordinate adjectives. A comma is used to set off a parenthetical comment or an aside. It is also used after a long introductory phrase or clause. Again, it is used to set off alternative or contrasting phrases. It is also used to separate words, phrases, and clauses in a series. Comma is used in a date where the order is month, day, and year. But commas are omitted for dates presented in day, month, and year style. It is also omitted between a month and a year and also between a season and a year. Comma is used to set off the components of a place name and also to set off a non-restrictive modifier. Words in opposition can be either non-restrictive or restrictive. If it is restrictive, the comma should be omitted. A comma should be omitted between a subject and verb, verb and object, parts of compound subject, parts of compound object, two verbs that share a subject, two subordinate elements that are parallel. Commas are optional with short introductory phrases and clauses around specific words like perhaps, therefore, etc. When two independent clauses are joined, comma is needed. Before some coordinating conjunctions, it is optional. Now let's see about semicolon. Semicolons, they mark a stronger separation than commas. Between independent clauses not linked by a conjunction, a semicolon is used. It's also used between items in a series when the items contain commas. It's also used in constructions where the verb is elided with a comma. With regard to colon, it is used to introduce a list, an elaboration of what was just said. It's also used to introduce a quotation that is independent from the structure of the main sentence. You should type one space after a colon. Dashes, they make a sharper break in the continuity of the sentence than commas do. Two hyphens with no space before, between, or after is done to type a dash. Parentheses make a sharper break than dashes. Dashes or parentheses are used to enclose a sentence element that interrupts the train of thought or to set off a parenthetical element that might be misread if set off with commas. Dash is used to introduce words that summarize a preceding series, to introduce a list or an elaboration of what was said, just in the place of colon. Hyphens are used for compound words of all types. It's also used for compound adjective beginning with an adverb and compound adjective ending with present or past participle of a verb, and also for compound adjective formed by a number and a noun when the adjective precedes a noun. Hyphen is used for other compound adjectives before nouns to prevent misreading. It is also used to join co-equal nouns, and it is not used in a compound adjective beginning with an adverb that is ending in ly, and also it is not used after prefixes. A compound adjective formed from a prepositional phrase is hyphenated. A dictionary shows you the clear-cut way to write many compound words. Apostrophes are used to indicate possession, which is the principal function of it. It's also used in contractions, which is rarely acceptable in research papers. It is also used to form the possessive of a singular noun and to form the possessive of a plural noun that is ending in s. It is also used to form the possessive of an irregular plural noun not ending in s, where an apostrophe and an s is added. To form the possessive of nouns in a series, a single apostrophe and an s is added if the ownership is shared. And to form the possessive of any singular proper noun, an apostrophe and an s are added. To form the possessive of a plural proper noun, only an apostrophe is added. And it is not used to form the plural of an abbreviation or a number. Quotation marks are placed around a word or phrase given in someone else's sense or in a special sense. It's also used for translation of a foreign word or phrase. Square brackets are used within a parenthesis in order to distinguish the levels of subordination. A slash is rarely necessary in writing a research paper other than in quotations of poetry. A sentence can end with a period, a quotation mark, or an exclamation point. Periods end declarative sentences. Question mark follow interrogative sentence and also should be placed inside closing quotation mark if the question mark occurs there in a quoted passage. If the quotation ends a sentence that is a question, it should be placed outside the quotation. If a question mark occurs where a comma or period would normally be required, the comma or period should be omitted. A concluding punctuation mark should be followed by one space, and also the internal punctuation marks such as colon, comma, semicolon should always be followed by one space. Italic is a style of type in which the characters slant to the right. Words and letters that are referred to as words and letters should be italicized. In general, foreign words used in an English text are italicized with certain exceptions. Italics is used to emphasize something which is rarely appropriate in research writing. With regard to the use of names of persons, a person's name used for the first time in the text of the research paper should be stated accurately and exactly as it appears in the source. Subsequent references to the person, only the last name or the most common form of the name may be given. For the famous persons like Shakespeare, it is not necessary to give the full name initially. Formal titles in referring to men or women, living or dead, should not be used. Few women in history are traditionally known by their titles as married women, where it should be retained. The appropriate way to refer to persons with titles of nobility can vary. Full name and title of Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, should be given at first mention, and thereafter Surrey alone can be used. It is common and acceptable to use simplified names of famous authors and also their pseudonyms. Fictional characters can be referred in the same way that the work of fiction does. Numbers that are not spelled out are commonly represented by Arabic numerals. Spell out the numbers written in one or two words and represent other numbers by numerals in literature or another subject that involves infrequent use of numbers. To form the plurals of a spelled out number, treat the word like an ordinary noun. Use numerals for all numbers that precede technical units of measurement if the project is on scientific subject or study of statistical findings. Do not bring a sentence with a numeral. Use numerals with abbreviations or symbols in decimal fractions, addresses, and in divisions. You can use combination of numerals and words for large numbers. Treat percentages and amounts of money like other numbers and use numerals with the appropriate symbols. Be consistent in writing dates. Use either the date, month, and year style or the month, day, year style. Centuries in lowercase letters should be spelled out. When centuries are used as adjectives before nouns, hyphenate it. Decades are usually written out without capitalization, but it is acceptable to express them in figures and should be consistent. The abbreviation BC follows the year, but AD precedes it. Numbers are used for most times of the day, and some exceptions include when time expressed in quarter and half hours and in hours followed by o'clock. While giving inclusive numbers, in a range of numbers, give the second number in full for numbers through 99. For larger numbers, give only the last two digits of the second number unless more are necessary. In a range of years beginning in AD, 1000 or later, omit the first two digits of the second year if they are the same as the first two digits of the first year. Otherwise, you can write both the years in full. In a range of years beginning from AD 1 through 999, follow the rules for inclusive numbers in general. Capital Roman numerals are used for the primary divisions of an outline and the names of persons in a series. Lowercase Roman numerals are used for citing pages of a book that are so numbered. Write out inclusive Roman numerals in full, also used to designate acts and scenes of plays. Now, coming to the titles of works in a research paper, take the title from the title page for citation. Do not reproduce any unusual typographic characteristics such as special capitalization or lowercasing of all letters. In a title or a subtitle, capitalize the first word, the last word, and all principal words, including those that follow hyphens in compound terms. Capitalize parts of speech like nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and also subordinating conjunctions. Do not capitalize the following parts of speech when they fall in the middle of the title It's like articles, prepositions, coordinating conjunctions, and also the two infinitives. Use a colon and a space to separate the title from the subtitle. Include other punctuation only if it is part of the title or subtitle. When the first line of the poem serves as the title of the poem, reproduce the line exactly as it appears in the text. You can italicize the titles of books, plays, poems published as books, pamphlets, periodicals, websites, online databases, films, television broadcasts, radio broadcasts, titles of compact disc, audio cassettes, record albums, dance performances, operas, long musical compositions identified by name, works of visual art, ships, aircraft, and spacecraft. Titles are put within quotation marks for titles of articles, essays, stories, poems published within larger works, chapters of books, pages in websites, individual episodes of television and radio broadcasts, short musical compositions, unpublished works such as lectures and speeches. So, for titles within titles or quotations, italicize a title normally indicated by italics when it appears within a title enclosed in quotation marks. Enclose a single quotation marks where a title normally indicated by quotation marks when it appears within another title requiring quotation marks. Place single quotation marks around a quotation that appears within a title requiring quotation marks. Use quotation marks around a title normally indicated by quotation marks when it appears within an italicized title. If a period is required after an italicized title that ends with a quotation mark, place the period before the quotation mark. Two common methods are followed for identifying a normally italicized title when it appears within an italicized title. One is the title within is neither italicized nor enclosed in quotation marks. The second is all titles within italicized titles are placed in quotation marks and italicized. Do not italicize or put in quotation marks the titles of scriptural writings, of laws, acts, etc. Also, titles appear without italics or quotation marks like Bible and so on, but italicized titles of individually published editions of scriptural writings, and treat the editions in the works cited list like any other published book. Words designating the divisions of a work are also not italicized or put in quotation marks, nor are they capitalized when used in the text. If a researcher cites a title, often in the research paper, either a shortened form or an abbreviation of it can be used. When you quote a prose, if the prose quotation runs no more than 4 lines and requires no special emphasis, put it in quotation marks and incorporate it into the text. You can quote either a word, a phrase, or a sentence or few sentences according to your choice. If a quotation extends to more than 4 lines, when run into the text, set it off from the text by beginning a new line indenting a half inch from the left margin, typing it double spaced without adding quotation marks. A colon generally introduces such quotation. If only a single paragraph or part of one is quoted, do not indent the first line more than the rest. Parenthetical references should follow the last line of the quotation. When you quote 2 or more paragraphs, indent the first line of each paragraph an additional quarter inch. If the first sentence quoted does not begin a paragraph in the source, however, do not indent it The additional amount indent only the first lines of the successive paragraphs. If you quote a part or all of a single line of verse that does not require special emphasis, put it in quotation marks within the text. You can incorporate 2 or 3 lines in this way using a slash with a space on each side to separate them. Verse quotations of more than 3 lines should begin on a new line. Unless the quotation involves unusual spacing, indent each line half an inch from the left margin and double space between lines, adding no quotation marks that do not appear in the original. Parenthetical reference follows the last line of the quotation. Parenthetical reference that will not fit on the line should appear on a new line flushed with the left margin of the page. A line that is too long to fit within the right margin should be continued on the next line and the continuation indented an additional quarter inch. The researcher may reduce the indentation of the quotation to less than 1 inch from the left margin if doing so will eliminate the need for such continuations. If the spatial arrangement of the original lines, including intent and spacing within and between them, is unusual, reproduce it as accurately as possible. When a verse quotation begins in the middle of a line, the partial line should be positioned where it is in the original and not shifted to the left margin. If a dialogue between 2 or more characters in a play is quoted, set the quotation off from the text. Begin each part of the dialogue with the appropriate character's name indented half an inch from the left margin, and the character's name should be written in all capital letters. Follow the name with a period and start the quotation. Indent all the subsequent lines in that character's speech an additional quarter inch. When the dialogue shifts to another character, start a new line indented half an inch from the left margin. Stage directions in a drama are treated like other quoted text. They should be reproduced exactly as they appear in the original source. When stage directions interrupt the grammatical sense of your sentence, they may be replaced with an ellipse. While omitting a word, a phrase, a sentence, or more than from a quoted passage, the researcher should be guided by 2 principles: fairness to the author quoted and also the grammatical integrity of the researcher's writing. If only a word or phrase is quoted, it will be obvious that some of the original sentences is left out. When words or sentences are omitted within the quotation, it should be substituted by ellipsis points or 3 spaced periods. When an ellipsis coincides with the end of the sentence, 4 periods with no space before the first or after the last should be used. Omission of words and phrases is the same for poetry. And omission of a line or more in the middle of a poetry quotation that is set off from the text is indicated by a line of spaced periods approximately the length of the complete line of the quoted text. If the quoted author uses ellipsis points, the researcher should distinguish them by putting square brackets around the ones the researcher adds. If the researcher thinks that the quotation will be unclear or confusing, he or she may provide supplementary information in a parenthesis after the quotation. If a pronoun in a quotation seems unclear, the researcher may add an identification in square brackets. The comment or an explanation that immediately follows the closing quotation mark appears in parentheses. And that's all about mechanics of writing. Hearty wishes for dedicated researchers. Thank you for watching.